Hello there. In this video lesson, what I'm going to talk about is how you can create objects like the Korean freedom pattern earring, which is shown on the screen in front of you there. Now, the way that we do this is we literally add objects onto the Fluid Designer workspace and place them on top of an image that's in the background. So this Korean freedom pattern earring starts off live as a JPEG or a bitmap image, and that could have been created either using a desktop publishing package or a drawing package like Paintbrush, or you could have also just taken a piece of paper, drawn the pattern that you want using a pen or a pencil, and then take a photograph of it and save it as a JPEG file. And then you put it in the background of Fluid Designer for 3D printing and place objects on top of it. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's actually go to Fluid Designer for 3D printing, and if we go to the earrings folder, and if we just scroll down to we're looking for K for Korean objects, and yeah, so we want this Korean earring freedom pattern. So if I just drag and drop that onto the workspace, you can see that's the earring from the opening screenshot there. So how was this created? Well, it's not here at the moment, but when I created this, there was a picture in the background which was basically the outline of this object. So how can I put an image onto the background of Fluid Designer for 3D printing? Well, first of all, we've got to change from the Fluid Designer menu to the Blender menu. So what we do is we go into the top left corner here and click on Show the Debug Tools, and we click Show the Default Blender Interface. And when we do that, we get some more panels appear over here on the right hand side in the Properties window. And what we need to do, we look for the one that says background images. So what we need to do is to tick the box for background images, and we need to add an image. Now there's nothing set at the moment. Now we don't want a movie clip, we want an image. So what we do is we can click on Open Image, and then if we just go through the menu system until we get to Groups, and on my system I've placed a image in the earrings folder in a subfolder which I've named background images. It doesn't matter where your image is, it could be on the desktop. You just have to scroll to it and select the image and then open the image. So there's my image, and as I say, this was actually created in Paintbrush, in Paint, and then just saved as a JPEG image. Now, as you can see at the moment, the size of this is different from the size of my finished object. And before you actually create this, what you need to do is to resize this image. Now, one of the important things in Fluid Designer, and in 3D printing I should say, is the thickness of the finished object. You really do want a thickness of about a minimum of 1 millimeter. And each of these blocks here is 1 millimeter square. So my image at the moment, if I drew around that, I could create an object around it, no problem, but it wouldn't have the right sort of thickness. It would be too thin. So it makes more sense to make this image bigger, and we can do that if you look in the Properties panel here. After you've added the image, there's all these other options at the bottom here, and if I click on the left of the size bar here and then drag to the right, you can see that I can zoom the image out. And what I'm really looking to do is to try and get it such that the thickness of one of these lines is 1 millimeter. And you can see that that's now matching up with my finished object. So if I just put that back onto the screen there, you can see, there we are. So I've had to size it up about 15 times. Now, the scale factor that you have to use will depend upon your original image. In fact, you might even have to scale it down. You may also sometimes need to move it to the right or the left. It just depends on how the image has been created and how it's positioned on your JPEG or bitmap image. So that's how you can import a background image which you can then draw around, create curves around to create finished objects. So if I just go back now to my Fluid Designer interface, so I just click on Show the Blender interface to switch off that extra panels in the Properties window there, and if I just click on Show the Debug Tools to hide the Blender button as well. So there's my earring. So how have I created it? Well, first of all, let me show you how you can create the circle on the outside. Well, if I just move that out to the left, the outside is created using a NURBS circle. So if I go to Add Curve and add a NURBS circle, what I need to do is to scale that NURBS circle up so that it fits around my background image. So if I press S on the keyboard and scale that up, and you want it to fit in the center more or less of that background image. Now things are not going to be absolutely perfect here, but you can get the idea here. Now when you scale in Fluid Designer, always remember to do Control A. No, forgot to switch on the screencast keys. Let me just switch the screencast keys on for you. If I do Control A and apply the scale, always try and remember to do that with any curves that you scale. Okay, so now how do we add in these other objects? Well, instead of using circles, NURBS circles, the way I've created these other objects is to use paths. So if I go to Add Curve and add a path, and then just zoom in there, what I need to do is to move that path. So I could, for example, move it to approximately there, and then if I rotate it, and I'm going to try and place it in this position here, so I'll just move it down a little bit and just scroll the center mouse button to zoom in. Now if I now go into edit mode, I can select the control points there, and at this stage I'm going to switch the snap off. And if I press G on the keyboard, G, that means I can grab it and I can pull that point down to there. So I can grab G on the keyboard and position that control point there. G on the keyboard. Now what you find is that there are 5 control points on each of these paths, and you can just G on the keyboard and reposition them until the path follows a line in your background image. Now once I've done that, if I press A on the keyboard to deselect and Tab to go out of edit mode. Now whenever you place one of these paths on, what you then need to do is to join it to the circle on the outside. So if you hold down the Shift key and highlight the circle, you can select Tools, Object Tools, and join them together. Now over in the outliner panel here, we've still just got the name NURBS circle as the object on the outside. We can change that to anything we want, so I could change that to Korean, I'll just say Korean earring. I won't say Korean freedom, earring freedom, because that will conflict with the object over here. I'll just call it Korean earring. So you can rename it. And then what you can do is you can apply some cross-section to it. So I can go 1 by 1 or 1 by 2, whatever cross-section you want. So that's how you can build up all the objects here. Now you clearly do have to take some time doing this. You don't want to have any objects sticking out of the outside here. So if I go into edit mode, for example, if I pull that one through, notice it's now sticking through. Okay, so try and get those in the middle. Make sure that you have a nice smooth surface on the inside there. You don't again, you don't want it, you don't want gaps like that, so you want it in the middle. So it does take quite a bit of time, to add all of these objects, but they're all added with NURBS paths. Okay, so once you've got your finished object, you can delete your image in the background. So you go to show the debug tools in the top left corner here, show the default Blender interface, and if you just delete the background image there and remove the tick from background images, and then close the Blender interface menu system and return to Fluid Designer, your finished object can then be saved on your system. So if you've actually created this from scratch yourself, you would actually want to go to File and save it as a Blender file. Now I'm not going to do that because this actually already exists, but if you create this from scratch, do try and remember to save it, and save it as a Blender file, which we don't normally do in Fluid Designer. If we now wanted to add a connector to this, we could just go to File and Append, go up through the menu system to Groups, go to Templates, Connectors. I'm going to add a wire connector with a 2mm diameter hole, so you could append that, and we could then position it, and let's see, I'm going to need to rotate it about the x-axis 180 degrees to get it going downwards like that. Just press the tab key to go into edit mode and just delete a couple of the control points there, and then if I hold down the shift key and join those two objects together, my connector will take on the cross section of the earring, so one by one. So then what you'd want to do is to save this as an OBJ, a printable file format, so you export it. So if we go to File and export it as a wavefront object to the desktop, so it's a Korean Freedom earring. So if you actually create the whole of this earring yourself from scratch using a NURBS circle and NURBS paths, do remember to save that as a Blender file. Go to File and Save. But if you just want the 3D printable file, the OBJ file, you go to File and Export. Okay, so that's how you can create your own designs like that by literally drawing on top of, putting items on top of a background image. Okay, so that's it for this particular video. Thank you.